Welcome to the Abyss, where beauty and terror share the same horizon. We're diving into the 13 bays, coves, inlets, and gulfs that look like postcards from paradise, but function as nature's most unforgiving death traps. Places where the sea doesn't forgive mistakes, where the line between adventure and obituary is thinner than a fishing line. If you've ever thought a calm-looking bay was safe for a quick dip or a shortcut sail, think again. Comfort? Safety? Those words don't exist here. Bay number 1, Haulover Inlet, the narrow gauntlet of Miami's fury. Imagine a stretch of turquoise water, framed by golden sand and high-rise condos glittering like diamonds in the Florida sun. From afar, Haulover Inlet looks like just another scenic passage connecting Biscayne Bay to the open Atlantic. A convenient shortcut for boaters heading out to fish or cruise. Crystal clear waters on good days, gentle swells rolling in, pelicans diving for their breakfast. It should be heaven for anyone with a boat and a weekend free. Instead, it's one of the most treacherous man-made choke points on the entire east coast of the United States. A place where calm can flip to chaos in the time it takes to finish a beer. The paradox hits hard. This narrow cut, carved by engineers in the 1920s to ease navigation, was supposed to tame the sea. Instead, it concentrated every ounce of the Atlantic's rage into a bottleneck barely wide enough for two decent-sized vessels to pass without kissing fenders. The jetties that line both sides funnel massive ocean swells into towering breaking waves that stack up like freight trains when the tide runs against the wind. One moment you're idling in flat water, the next, you're staring down a wall of green that could swallow a 30-foot center console whole. The anatomy of the disaster is brutally simple, yet endlessly variable. Strong tidal currents, sometimes rushing at 5 knots or more, collide with incoming northeast swells. Sandbars shift almost weekly, turning yesterday's safe channel into today's shallow grave. Boats get caught in the break zone, broach sideways, and roll. Engines cavitate in the aerated whitewater, losing grip just when you need it most. The U.S. Coast Guard has pulled countless vessels and people out of here over the decades. Capsizes happen with depressing regularity. Some days, the inlet looks like a demolition derby on water. Experienced captains whisper about it like sailors once spoke of Cape Horn. Avoid it in anything but ideal conditions, and even then, hold your breath. Now picture a typical day trying to survive it. You're a local charter captain, maybe running a group of tourists out for mahi-mahi. Dawn light filters through the palms as you ease toward the inlet mouth. The forecast said light winds, but the barometer's dropping, and that usually means trouble. You throttle up gently, eyes scanning for the first set. Suddenly the bow lifts. A rogue wave, maybe 8 feet, curls over the jetty and slams down. Water explodes across the deck, blinding the windshield. The boat heels hard to port as the current yanks you sideways. You gun the engines, but the props are half out of the water, screaming in vain. Passengers scream. One loses his grip on the T-top and slides toward the gunwale. If you're lucky, you muscle through the next wave before it breaks on your beam. If not, well, the salvage yards up in Fort Lauderdale are full of twisted aluminum reminders. The costs add up, in more ways than dollars. A decent tow from the middle of the inlet can run you several $1,000s if your insurance even covers known hazardous areas. Replacement engines after ingesting sand and salt water? Add another 5 figures. And that's assuming you don't end up in the hospital with a broken collarbone or worse. Locals joke darkly that Haulover is where boats go to die, and sometimes their owners go with them. Yet every weekend warriors line up like lemmings, convinced their new twin outboards and fancy electronics will conquer what generations of mariners couldn't. Philosophically, Haulover Inlet is a brutal reminder of human arrogance meeting nature's indifference. We dig channels, build jetties, think we've mastered the ocean, then watch it laugh and rearrange the sand under our keels. The statistics of wrecks and near misses don't capture the real terror. That split second when you realize the sea has decided today is not your day. Yet amid the chaos, there's a strange resilience. Captains who learn its moods, time their runs with the tide, and emerge on the other side grinning like they've beaten the devil himself. Hope flickers in those who respect it enough to fear it. From the concrete chaos of Miami's backyard, we sail north, toward a place where shifting sands claim more ships than pirates ever did, and the Atlantic earns its old nickname as the Graveyard. If you value calm waters and the ability to swim without fearing for your life, support this series with a like. Drop a comment. Which bay on this list would you absolutely refuse to enter for even an hour? Your stories keep these dark corners of the ocean lit. Bay number 2, Oregon Inlet, the shifting graveyard's northern jaw. Picture this, a long, narrow ribbon of barrier islands stretching like a fragile spine along North Carolina's Outer Banks. Golden dunes rise against endless blue sky, wild horses roam free in places, and the sound of crashing surf never quite stops. Oregon Inlet slices through Pea Island and Bodie Island, linking Pamlico Sound to the wild Atlantic. A vital artery for commercial fishermen chasing bluefin tuna, sport boats hunting marlin, and everyday folks just trying to get offshore for a day of peace. On calm mornings, it looks almost inviting. Water sparkling, birds wheeling overhead, the old Bonner Bridge arching gracefully above like a promise of safe passage. It should be a boater's dream shortcut. Instead, it's one of the most unpredictable, sand-choked death traps on the entire Atlantic seaboard. Part of the infamous stretch nicknamed the Graveyard of the Atlantic, for good reason. The irony cuts deep. This inlet was born violently in the Great Hurricane of 1846, ripping open what had been solid land and creating a new path to the sea. Nature's engineers did the work, but humans thought they could improve on it. Jetties were added, channels dredged repeatedly, yet the sand keeps moving, like a living thing. Currents here don't just flow, they rage. The Gulf Stream brushes close offshore, colliding with colder coastal waters, while massive weather systems from the northeast whip up swells that funnel straight into this bottleneck. Sandbars build and erode overnight. What was 10 feet deep yesterday might be 3 feet today, or dry sand tomorrow. Navigation markers get buried or swept away. One wrong turn, one moment of inattention, and your keel kisses bottom hard enough to shear off props, flood bilges, or flip the whole boat in the breaking surf. The anatomy of the collapse here is a masterclass in chaos theory applied to the sea. Opposing forces meet. Strong tidal ebbs, sometimes pushing 5 knots or more, slam against incoming ocean swells that can stack up to towering heights when wind opposes tide. The narrow channel amplifies everything. Waves refract off the shifting shoals, creating confused seas where peaks collide from multiple directions. Boats broach, roll, lose steerage in the aerated foam. Engines ingest sand and cavitate uselessly. The Coast Guard station at Oregon Inlet has one of the highest call volumes in the country for assists. Capsizes, groundings, maydays that end with helicopters hovering low over whitewater. Commercial fishermen who work these waters year-round treat the inlet like a moody ex. Respect it, time it perfectly with the tide, or pay the price. Even then, luck plays its hand. More vessels have met their end here than almost anywhere else along the Outer Banks, adding to the thousands of wrecks littering the graveyard from Cape Hatteras southward. Try living, or surviving, a single day navigating this beast. You're a local charter captain out of Wanchese or Manteo, running a group of hopeful anglers toward the Gulf Stream. Pre-dawn, you check the charts. Talk to other captains on the VHF. The weather buoy, reports. The tide's ebbing hard. Winds light from the southwest. Marginal, but doable if you're quick. You idle under the bridge, feel the current grab the hull like a giant hand. As you approach the mouth, the first ocean swell rolls in, steepens against the outflow, breaks white across the bar. You pick what looks like the deepest gut between 2 foaming ridges, throttle up to punch through. The boat launches off one wave, slams into the next, green water over the bow, windshield wipers going full blast. A passenger's cooler flies overboard. Someone else clings to the leaning post, white-knuckled. If the sandbar shifted since last week's dredge, you're suddenly in 3 feet of water, going 20 knots. Prop strike, boat slew sideways, next breaker rolls you. Survival becomes seconds. Kill the engines to avoid sucking more sand. Deploy the EPIRB if things go south. Pray the mayday gets through before the radio shorts out. Tow bills here run into the tens of thousands, if you're lucky enough to float off. Many don't. Salvage crews know the coordinates by heart. The philosophical weight settles heavy. Oregon Inlet mocks every chart plotter, every sonar upgrade, every bit of technology we throw at the ocean. We dredge, we jetty, we mark, and the sand laughs, rearranging itself like it has for centuries. Statistics of groundings and wrecks tell only half the story. They miss the quiet terror of watching the death sounder drop from safe to danger in heartbeats. The helplessness when nature decides your plans don't matter. Yet resilience shines through in the captains who still run it daily. They study the bar like meteorologists study storms, wait for the right window, share hard-earned knowledge over coffee at the docks. There's a grim pride in mastering something that refuses to be tamed. A reminder that humility before the sea isn't weakness. It's the only way to keep breathing. From the ever-shifting sands of North Carolina's Barrier Islands, our journey pulls southward, deeper into the graveyard, toward a cape where diamonds aren't jewels, but deadly shoals that have claimed legends and lifetimes alike. Bay number 3, Hatteras Inlet, the heart of the graveyard's unforgiving embrace. Envision the wild, windswept expanse of North Carolina's Outer Banks, where the land barely clings to existence. Thin strips of sand dunes, sea oats whipping in the constant breeze, and the Atlantic stretching out like an endless, brooding predator. Hatteras Inlet cuts through the Barrier Islands south of Cape Hatteras, connecting Pamlico Sound to the open ocean in a wide but deceptive gash. From a distance, it appears almost serene. Broad waters, distant lighthouses standing sentinel, the occasional dolphin fin breaking the surface. Fishermen dream of running out here for giant bluefin or tilefish in deeper grounds. The potential feels boundless, a gateway to rich fishing grounds, a historic passage used since colonial times. It should be a mariner's reliable friend. Yet this inlet sits squarely in the throat of what sailors have long called the graveyard of the Atlantic, a place where thousands of vessels have met their end over centuries, and Hatteras Inlet serves as one of its most relentless executioners. The cruel twist lies in its deceptive openness. Unlike narrower choke points that telegraph their malice immediately, Hatteras spreads wide, sometimes a mile or more across, tempting captains to relax their guard. But beneath that breadth lurks treachery, born from the same forces that carved the entire graveyard. The collision of the warm Gulf Stream hugging the coast with colder Labrador Current waters, creating violent temperature contrasts that fuel ferocious storms. Diamond Shoals, that infamous underwater finger of shifting sand extending miles offshore from Cape Hatteras, funnels swells directly into the inlet's mouth. When a strong southeasterly blows against an ebbing tide, waves stack impossibly high, breaking across vast shoals in chaotic patterns. The channel meanders unpredictably. What charts show as safe water one season can become a breaking bar the next. Sand moves like quicksilver here. Storms close old paths, open false ones, bury buoys under tons of sediment. Add rogue northeasters or hurricanes that spin up with little warning, and the inlet transforms from passable to apocalyptic in hours. The breakdown of safety follows a grim, predictable script that has played out countless times. Powerful tidal flows, often exceeding 4 or 5 knots on the ebb, oppose incoming ocean swells, building steep, near-vertical faces that collapse with explosive force. Boats attempting to enter during opposing conditions get caught in the breaker zone. Hulls slam down hard, rudders lose bite, engines labor in froth that provides no purchase. Broaching becomes almost inevitable. A vessel turns beam to the seas, rolls violently, and either rights itself through sheer luck or flips, dumping everyone into churning white water laced with debris from previous wrecks. The Coast Guard's Hatteras station logs assists in tragedies with weary regularity. Groundings on invisible bars, capsizes in the surf, maydays that end in long swims or helicopter extractions. Commercial longliners and headboats that depend on this passage know the drill. Wait for slack tide, watch the bar like hawks, never push marginal conditions. Yet even veterans get humbled. The inlet has claimed everything from wooden schooners in the old days to modern fiberglass sport fishers, adding to the estimated thousands of hulls littering these waters, from colonial wrecks to modern casualties. Surviving a single day here feels like gambling with loaded dice. You're captaining a sturdy charter boat loaded with clients eager for offshore action, departing from Hatteras Village or Avon at first light. The VHF crackles with local wisdom. Bars building, tides running hard, sit tight if you're smart. But the fish are biting, reports from the stream pull you forward. You ease toward the inlet, engines humming, eyes glued to the sounder and the horizon. As you near the mouth, the first big set rolls in. 10-foot faces steepening against the outflow, white crests curling like breaking knuckles. You line up what looks like the gut, throttle forward to punch through. The boat launches skyward off one wave, crashes into the trough of the next. Solid water floods the cockpit, knocking gear loose and soaking everyone. A passenger loses footing, slides toward the transom. You haul the wheel hard to keep from broaching as the current yanks sideways. If the shoal has migrated overnight, the bottom rises suddenly. Props strike sand with a grinding shudder. Engines scream and over-rev. Alarms blare. Survival narrows to instinct. Trim tabs up. Power managed precisely. Pray the next wave doesn't bury you. Many make it through, scarred but afloat. Others don't. Tow operators know these coordinates intimately, and salvage costs climb into 5 figures fast when engines ingest grit or hulls split on submerged wreckage. The inlet doesn't just threaten boats, it threatens livelihoods, dreams, and sometimes lives, in the blink of an eye. In the end, Hatteras Inlet stands as a stark lesson in nature's refusal to be domesticated. We build aids to navigation, dredge channels, broadcast warnings. Yet the shoals shift, the storms rage, and the sea reminds us that control is an illusion. The raw numbers of lost ships fail to convey the intimate dread. That moment when the depth sounder plummets, the horizon disappears behind green water, and every decision compresses into seconds. Still, a fierce tenacity endures among those who call these shores home. Local watermen time their runs with almost mystical precision, share knowledge passed down through generations, and emerge victorious more often than not. That quiet defiance, respecting the inlet's power while refusing to surrender to it, carries a profound dignity, proof that even in the graveyard, human spirit can sometimes navigate the impossible. Leaving the relentless churn of Hatteras behind, our path turns westward across the continent, toward a rugged California coast where cold Pacific swells meet towering headlands, and one infamous passage guards the entrance to San Francisco Bay like a dragon at the gate. Bay number 4, Columbia River Bar, the graveyard of the Pacific's relentless maw. Visualize the rugged, fog-shrouded coastline where the mighty Columbia River, one of North America's largest waterways, finally surrenders to the Pacific after carving its path through mountains, forests, and history. The bar at the river's mouth stretches wide across the entrance to the bay, a chaotic mixing zone where fresh river water collides head-on with the endless cold swells rolling in from thousands of miles of open ocean. From the Astoria waterfront or the overlooks at Cape Disappointment, it can appear almost majestic on a clear day. Massive freighters gliding past, fishing boats bobbing like toys, the distant silhouette of the Astoria Megler Bridge spanning the river like a steel promise. The potential seems straightforward, a vital shipping channel feeding trade to Portland and beyond, a historic gateway used since Lewis and Clark's time. It should be a reliable thoroughfare for commerce and adventure. Instead, this bar earns its grim nickname as the Graveyard of the Pacific. claiming more shipwrecks than almost any other single stretch of coastline in the world. A place where the ocean and the river engage in eternal, violent combat. The bitter paradox is in its deceptive scale. The Columbia pours out enormous volumes of water, sometimes millions of cubic feet per second during floods, creating one of the strongest outflow currents anywhere. That force meets Pacific ground swells that travel unimpeded across vast distances, building into steep, powerful waves as they hit the shallow bar. Depths drop from hundreds of feet offshore to mere dozens across the entrance, forcing energy to compress and explode upward. Sand and silt shift constantly. Channels that were dredged deep last month can shoal overnight after a storm. Add prevailing northwest winds that pile water against the outflow, and you get standing waves, steep breakers, and chaotic cross seas that can flip even large vessels. The bar pilots, elite mariners who board incoming ships, know every mood of this beast, but even they wait for windows, refusing to cross in certain conditions. Over 2,000 documented large ship losses litter these waters since the 1800s, from wooden sailing vessels to modern steel freighters, each adding to a tally that dwarfs many famous maritime disasters. The mechanics of destruction play out with mechanical cruelty. Ebb tides roar out at speeds that can exceed 6 knots, slamming against incoming swells to create near-vertical faces that break with thunderous force. A vessel caught in the transition zone loses steerage in aerated whitewater. Rudders cavitate, props lose bite, hulls pound relentlessly until something gives. Freighters broach, roll beam to, take green water over the deck that floods hatches or smashes superstructure. Smaller boats, crabbers, trollers, pleasure craft, fare worse. They get picked up and slammed down like driftwood. The Coast Guard's National Motor Lifeboat School at Ilwaco trains elite surfmen here precisely because these conditions demand the best. Boats that self-right, crews that operate and surf no sane person would enter otherwise. Maydays come in waves during winter storms. Helicopters hover low, pulling survivors from churning chaos, while the bar claims more debris. Commercial fishermen who make their living crossing daily treat it with reverence bordering on superstition. Check the bar report religiously. Time the slack. Never push against a building ebb. Surviving one crossing here is a masterclass in tension and precision. You're crewing a commercial crab boat out of Astoria or Ilwaco, pots stacked high, heading for the grounds off the Washington coast at dawn. The bar report crackles over the radio. Conditions marginal, strong ebb, swells from the west at 12 to 15 feet. You weigh the risk. Crab prices are high, season's short, and decide to go. Engines rumble as you idle toward the entrance, the river's current already grabbing the hull. Fog clings low, visibility drops to a mile or less. As you near the bar, the first big swell rolls under, lifting the boat high before dropping it into a trough that slams the keel. Water explodes across the deck, washing loose gear overboard. The deckhand clings to the rail as the boat heels violently. You line up the buoyed channel, throttle surging to punch through each breaker. A rogue set builds, steeper, meaner, curling over like a wall of green glass. The boat launches off one, crashes into the next. Solid water buries the wheelhouse. Alarms shriek from flooded compartments. If the bar has shoaled unexpectedly, bottom rises fast. Props grind sand, engines labor, the vessel slews sideways into the brake zone. Survival hinges on split-second choices. Back off power to avoid broaching, ride the back of a wave, radio for help if things go south. Tow fees and repairs can devour a season's profits. Many boats never make it back upright. The bar doesn't just threaten hulls. It threatens families, mortgages, entire communities built on crossing it. Philosophically, the Columbia River Bar embodies nature's raw indifference to human ambition. We dredge relentlessly, mark channels with precision, train specialists to guide ships through. Yet the river keeps pouring, the ocean keeps pounding, and the bar reshapes itself like it has for millennia. Wreck counts and loss statistics skim the surface, They miss the visceral dread of watching the horizon vanish behind foaming crests, the helplessness when physics overrides skill. Yet extraordinary grit persists among those who work these waters. Bar pilots accumulate decades of crossings. Surfmen earn their wings in the worst conditions imaginable. Fishermen share knowledge over coffee at dawn. That stubborn endurance, acknowledging the bar's supremacy while refusing to quit, speaks to something deep. Respect born of fear. Survival forged in repeated defiance of the impossible. From the relentless collision at the Columbia's mouth, our voyage swings southward along the Pacific's edge, toward another California inlet where cold water, steep swells, and unforgiving rock create a gauntlet few forget. Bay number 5, Golden Gate, the iconic portal to perilous Pacific fury. Imagine standing on the Marin headlands or atop the iconic red-orange bridge that spans the Narrows like a colossal guardian, watching fog roll in thick as smoke from a distant fire. Below, the waters of San Francisco Bay squeeze through the mile-wide strait connecting the protected inner bay to the vast, cold Pacific. The Golden Gate looks majestic in postcards, sailboats gliding under the span, container ships slipping past Alcatraz silhouettes, the city skyline gleaming in rare, clear light. It promises adventure, gateway to one of America's most storied harbors, home to tech billionaires' yachts and working fishing fleets alike. The potential feels almost cinematic. Smooth entry on a calm day, easy access to rich grounds offshore, or safe refuge inside. Yet this famous passage ranks among the most hazardous navigational choke points on the West Coast, a place where fog, ferocious currents, massive swells, and sudden weather shifts turn routine crossings into life-or-death battles with unnerving frequency. The savage irony is in its fame masking its ferocity. The Golden Gate isn't a narrow, rock-lined slot like some inlets. It's deceptively wide, which lulls skippers into complacency. But that width funnels enormous tidal flows. The bay's immense volume rushes in and out twice daily, creating currents that can exceed 6 knots in the main channel during peak floods or ebbs. Pacific ground swells, traveling thousands of miles unchecked, refract and steepen as they hit the shallow bar just outside the heads. When wind opposes tide, a common scenario with prevailing northwest breezes, standing waves build to towering, near-vertical faces that break across broad expanses. Fog descends without warning, reducing visibility to boat lengths or less. Radar clutter from the bridge, buoys, and traffic adds confusion. The infamous Potato Patch Shoal area outside the gate piles up massive, confused seas during big weather. Ships have foundered here since the Gold Rush era. Over 400 documented wrecks litter the approaches in the Greater Farallon Sanctuary alone. From clipper ships driven onto rocks in the 1800s, to modern casualties lost in collisions or groundings. The combination of high-speed commercial traffic, recreational boats, and unpredictable elements makes every transit a calculated risk. The destruction follows a chillingly repeatable pattern. Strong ebb tides pour out toward the ocean, meeting incoming swells head-on to create steep, breaking chaos right at the entrance. Vessels lose steerage in aerated whitewater. Rudders become useless, props cavitate wildly. Larger ships broach or shear sideways under the force, while smaller craft get picked up and slammed down repeatedly until hulls split or engines flood. Fog turns the world gray and silent except for the roar of breakers and the blare of horns. Disorientation sets in fast, leading to collisions with the bridge piers, other vessels, or the rocky shores of Point Bonita and Land's End. The Coast Guard Station Golden Gate handles frequent assists, maydays from flipped sailboats, grounded fishing vessels, swimmers caught in rip currents that can drag people out to sea at terrifying speeds. Bar pilots guide the big ships through, but even they cancel in extreme conditions. Recreational boaters, weekend sailors heading for the Farallons, or just a bay cruise, often underestimate the transition from flat bay water to open ocean violence, paying dearly when a sudden set buries them. Living through, or merely attempting, one crossing here demands razor-sharp awareness. You're captaining a modest sport fisher out of Sausalito or Emeryville. Clients aboard for a day chasing halibut or salmon beyond the gate. Dawn breaks clear, but the marine forecast warns of building northwest winds and a moderate swell. You check the tide tables religiously. Flood coming in, which might ease the bar. Engines warm as you motor under the bridge, the current already pushing gently. As you clear the heads, the first ocean swell rolls under, smooth at first, then steeper as it feels the shallowing bottom. Visibility drops as fog thickens. Radar pings densely with traffic. A big set builds against the ebb beginning to run. Waves stack up, break wide across the channel. You throttle to maintain headway, but the boat launches off one crest and plunges into the next trough with a bone-jarring crash. Green water sweeps the deck, soaking electronics. A passenger grips the rail as the hull shudders. If the potato patch is active, confused cross seas slam from multiple angles. The boat rolls hard, threatens to broach. Engines labor in foam. If you lose way, the current sweeps you toward the rocks, or into shipping lanes. Survival narrows to instinct. Anticipate sets, ride the backs of waves, sound the danger signal if needed. Have the EPIRB ready. Many limp back inside, scarred but intact. Others require towing that costs thousands, or worse, helicopter extractions from cold water, where hypothermia strikes fast. The gate doesn't forgive hesitation or overconfidence. Ultimately, the Golden Gate serves as a profound emblem of beauty intertwined with mortal danger. We celebrate it as engineering triumph and natural wonder. Bridge lights glowing through mist, foghorns echoing like lonely calls. Yet it relentlessly humbles every mariner who passes. Wreck tallies and incident logs capture scale, but not the intimate panic. The moment depth sounder drops, fog closes in, and the Pacific asserts its dominance. Still, remarkable resilience thrives among those who navigate it regularly. Commercial captains time their runs with precision born of experience. Recreational skippers learn from locals, share VHF chatter about conditions. That blend of caution, skill, and quiet respect, knowing the gate can kill but choosing to engage anyway, reveals something essential. True mastery at sea isn't conquering nature, but learning to dance with its moods without stepping on its toes. From the fog-shrouded narrows of San Francisco's famous entrance, our odyssey continues southward along California's rugged edge, toward another bay where cold upwelling waters meet steep headlands, and one small harbor mouth guards its secrets with breaking bars and unforgiving rock. Bay number 6, Morro Bay, California's hidden bar of breaking deception. Picture the rugged Central California coastline, where volcanic plugs rise like ancient sentinels from the sea, black rocks contrasting sharply against rolling green hills and the deep blue Pacific. Morro Bay nestles behind a long sand spit and the massive silhouette of Morro Rock, that 900-foot-tall volcanic dome looming over the harbor like a watchful giant. From the waterfront esplanade or the decks of sport fishing boats tied up at the docks, the entrance looks manageable. A narrow channel marked by buoys, protected somewhat by the rock and the curving arm of sand. On glassy days, it beckons anglers chasing rockfish, crabbers setting pots, and recreational boaters heading offshore for calm seas and big halibut. The potential shines bright. A cozy fishing town with fresh seafood markets, otters floating in the back bay, and easy access to deep water grounds just beyond the bar. It should be a welcoming respite along this unforgiving stretch of coast. Yet Morro Bay's entrance bar ranks among the most consistently treacherous on the California coast, a place where steep Pacific swells meet shallow sand and strong tidal flows to create a gauntlet that punishes the unprepared with relentless consistency. The harsh twist comes from its apparent shelter. Unlike wide-open river mouths that announce their fury from miles away, Morro Bay's bar hides behind Morro Rock, which deflects some wave energy but funnels the rest into a concentrated zone right at the narrow entrance. Pacific ground swells, often arriving from distant storms thousands of miles west, wrap around the rock and refract sharply. building steep, fast-moving faces as they hit the shallow bar. Tidal currents rip in and out through the constricted channel, sometimes reaching 4 or 5 knots during peak ebbs or floods. When wind opposes tide, a frequent occurrence with prevailing northwest breezes, standing waves form across the entrance, breaking in chaotic patterns over shifting shoals. The sandspit migrates seasonally. What was a safe gut last week can become a breaking ridge today. Fog often rolls in thick from the cold, upwelling waters offshore, turning the world to gray and muffling sounds except for the ominous crash of breakers. The Coast Guard maintains vigilant watch here, but even they restrict crossings during big weather, and the local bar pilots and experienced fishermen treat the entrance with deep caution. Wrecks and near misses accumulate over decades, from small pleasure craft flipped in the surf to larger vessels grounded hard when caught off guard by a sudden set. The pattern of peril unfolds with grim predictability. Outgoing tides pour toward the ocean, colliding with incoming swells to erect near-vertical walls that collapse with explosive violence. Boats attempting the bar lose momentum in aerated foam. Props cavitate, rudders lose grip, hulls pound until frames crack or engines ingest sand. Smaller vessels get launched skyward on one wave, only to slam into the next trough with bone-jarring force, often rolling or broaching sideways into the break zone. The narrow channel leaves little room for error. Stray outside the markers, and you're on the rocks or the shallow spit in seconds. Commercial crab boats and party fishing vessels that rely on this passage know the ritual. Study the swell period and direction, time the slack tide precisely, never push against a building sea. Recreational boaters, weekend warriors launching from the ramp or trailering in from inland, frequently misjudge the transition from calm back bay water to open ocean chaos, leading to capsizes that fill tow logs and hospital reports. The bar doesn't discriminate. It humbles veterans and novices alike when conditions align against them. Enduring a single transit here tests nerves and preparation to the limit. You're running a local charter boat loaded with hopeful anglers out of the Embarcadero at first light, targeting deep water rock cod beyond the bay. The marine forecast calls for moderate northwest swell and light winds, doable if you move quick. You idle past the rock, feeling the current begin to grab as the ebb strengthens. Fog lingers low, visibility patchy. As you approach the bar, the first big swell rolls in, refracting off Morro Rock and steepening sharply over the shallow entrance. You line up the buoyed channel, throttle forward to maintain speed through the chop. Suddenly, a set builds, steeper than expected, curling white across the bar. The boat climbs the face, launches off the crest, then crashes into the trough ahead, with a shuddering impact that sends gear flying and water cascading over the gunnels. A passenger grips the T-top as the hull twists in confused cross seas. The sounder drops alarmingly as sand rises beneath the keel. If the bar has shoaled since the last dredge, props kiss bottom with a grinding protest. Engines strain, the vessel slews toward the rocks lining the north side. Survival compresses into heartbeats. Adjust trim, power through carefully, watch for the next breaker, have the VHF ready for a pan if needed. Many scrape through bruised but operational. Others require assistance that racks up thousands in fees for tows, haul-outs, and repairs when sand clogs intakes or hulls suffer damage. The entrance doesn't just threaten equipment. It endangers lives, businesses, and the fragile confidence that lets people push offshore for a living or a day of escape. In reflection, Morro Bay's bar stands as a quiet testament to nature's subtle treachery. We admire the rock, enjoy the town's charm, assume the narrow entrance offers protection, yet the Pacific finds ways to assert dominance through refraction, current, and shifting sand. Incident reports and bar condition logs tell part of the tale, but they overlook the raw anxiety of watching a set approach in fog, the helplessness when a wave buries the bow, the relief of clearing into deeper water. Nevertheless, a stubborn resilience endures among the locals who work these waters. Fishermen time their runs with near-instinctive precision, share real-time observations over coffee or radio, adapt to every mood of the bar. That blend of vigilance, local knowledge, and quiet determination, respecting the entrance's power while continuing to cross it, captures something fundamental. At sea, safety isn't guaranteed, but survival often comes from understanding exactly where the danger lies and refusing to ignore it. From the deceptive shelter of Morro Bay's volcanic guardian, our journey presses farther south, toward another California harbor, where a wide bay meets the open ocean through a narrow, rock-fringed mouth, and cold upwelling creates conditions that demand every ounce of skill and caution. Bay number 6, Dana Point Harbor Entrance, Southern California's deceptive calm before the break. Envision the sun-drenched coastline of southern Orange County, where manicured marinas nestle against dramatic bluffs, luxury homes perch like seabirds on the hills, and the Pacific stretches out in shades of turquoise and cobalt. Dana Point Harbor sits snugly behind a long, curving breakwater and two massive stone jetties that reach out like protective arms from the shore. The entrance channel looks almost civilized, wide enough for yachts and sport fishers to pass comfortably, marked clearly with lighted buoys, sheltered from most direct ocean swell by the engineering that created the harbor in the 1960s. On a typical summer morning, the scene feels idyllic. Sailboats gliding out for a day cruise, fishing charters heading toward Catalina or the deep drop-offs, families waving from the decks of sport boats loaded with coolers and rods. The potential seems perfect. Easy access, protected waters inside, quick runs to rich offshore fishing grounds, or simply a pleasant afternoon on flat, bay-like conditions. It should be one of the safest, most user-friendly harbor entrances along the entire California coast. Yet beneath that polished surface lurks one of the sneakiest, most consistently dangerous bar crossings in Southern California. A place where seemingly mild conditions can turn lethal in moments due to refracted swell, strong tidal sets, and the unforgiving geometry of man-made protection. The cruel deception lies in the harbor's very design. The long western breakwater was built to tame the Pacific, blocking most direct wave energy and creating a relatively calm basin inside. But that same structure forces incoming ground swells to bend and wrap around its end, refracting sharply into the narrow entrance corridor. What starts as a gentle 4 or 5 foot ocean swell offshore can stack up into steep, closely spaced breakers right at the jetties when it hits the shallow bar that naturally forms across the mouth. Tidal currents, amplified by the constricted opening, rush in and out at speeds that often hit 3 to 4 knots during peak flows. When a moderate northwest wind piles against an outgoing tide, standing waves build across the entire channel width, creating a washing machine effect where peaks collide from different directions. The sandbar migrates with storms and seasonal shifts. Dredges struggle to keep pace, leaving pockets of unexpectedly shallow water that catch keels at speed. Fog is less frequent here than farther north, but when it rolls in from the cold upwelling offshore, visibility drops fast, turning the transit into a high-stakes game of radar and instinct. Local harbor masters post condition flags religiously, and experienced captains wait for green lights. Yet every season brings fresh statistics of groundings, near capsizes, and tows that remind everyone the bar doesn't care about the postcard view. The sequence of trouble follows a depressingly familiar rhythm. Outgoing tides pour toward the ocean, meeting refracted swells head-on to erect steep, fast-breaking faces that collapse with surprising force across the narrowest part of the channel. Boats lose forward momentum in aerated whitewater. Props spin uselessly. Rudders lose bite. Hulls pound until gelcoat cracks or stringers flex dangerously. Smaller center consoles and bay boats, popular among weekend anglers here, get launched high on one wave only to slam into the next with teeth-rattling impacts, often rolling or broaching toward the rocky jetty sides. The confined space leaves scant margin for recovery. Stray a few yards outside the buoy line, and you're grinding on submerged boulders or the shifting bar itself. Commercial passenger vessels and high-end sport fishers that run daily charters know the drill intimately. Study swell direction and period obsessively. Time departures and returns with slack or flood tides. Never attempt the bar in opposing conditions unless absolutely necessary. Recreational boaters, many trailering in from inland communities or renting slips for the season, frequently underestimate the transition from serene harbor water to the sudden violence at the mouth, leading to incidents that clog the harbormaster's logbook and fill salvage yards with damaged hulls. Surviving, or even attempting one transit here, becomes an exercise in calculated tension. You're skippering a well-equipped 30-foot center console, loaded with a group of corporate clients out for half-day rock fishing, toward the Coronado Islands, or just a relaxed cruise to Avalon. The morning report shows light winds, moderate swell from the west, conditions labeled fair on the harbormaster's board. You ease past the fuel dock, engines purring, feeling the gentle push of the ebb beginning to build. As you approach the gap between the jetties, the first refracted set rolls in, seemingly innocent 4-footers offshore, but compressing and steepening sharply over the bar. You line up the center channel, increase throttle to carry speed through the chop. Suddenly, the lead wave curls, breaks wide across the entrance. The boat climbs, launches off the crest, then drops into the trough with a jarring crash that sends spray over the T-top and loose gear skittering across the deck. A passenger braces against the leaning post as the hull twists and cross-chop. The depth sounder flickers downward alarmingly as an uncharted shoal pocket rises beneath the keel. Props brush sand with a momentary shudder, enough to make your stomach drop, before you power through into deeper water. If the set had been larger or the bar shoaled more aggressively overnight, the outcome could flip from bumpy ride to full broach. Boat slewing sideways, next breaker rolling over the gunnel, engines flooding, mayday crackling over VHF. Many make it out scratched but operational. Others limp back inside or require towing that racks up bills in the thousands for haul-outs, engine flushes, and gel coat repairs. The entrance doesn't scream danger like wilder bars farther north. It whispers it, lulling skippers into mistakes that cost dearly. Philosophically, Dana Point's harbor mouth stands as a sharp reminder that safety is never absolute, even when humans engineer every detail. We build massive breakwaters, dredge channels, install lights and markers, post daily condition reports. Yet the Pacific finds ways to sneak around our defenses through refraction, current amplification, and shifting sand. Incident counts and caution flags tell only the numbers. They miss the intimate jolt of watching a breaker form unexpectedly, the split-second dread when the bottom rises too fast, the quiet relief of clearing into open water. Still, a resilient pragmatism thrives among those who use this passage regularly. Local captains develop almost preternatural feel for the bar's moods, share real-time updates via text chains and dockside conversations, adapt schedules to the ocean's rhythm rather than fighting it. That combination of vigilance, humility, and persistent use, acknowledging the entrance can bite hard while continuing to cross it for work, pleasure, or livelihood, reveals a deeper truth. True security on the water comes not from eliminating risk, but from learning precisely how much risk you're willing and able to carry. From the engineered calm of Dana Point's deceptive gateway, our path continues southward, crossing into Mexican waters toward another storied Pacific inlet, where warm currents, towering surf, and shifting sand create one of the most notorious bar crossings in all of Baja California. Bay number 7, Cabo San Lucas Marina Entrance, the glitzy gateway with a treacherous twist. Visualize the sun-baked southern tip of Baja California, where desert meets sea in dramatic fashion. Jagged red rock cliffs plunge into turquoise water. Luxury resorts line the shore like polished jewels, and sport fishing boats parade in and out of a modern marina complex. Cabo San Lucas sits at the very end of the peninsula, where the Pacific Ocean collides with the Sea of Cortez, creating a natural amphitheater of swells and currents. The entrance to the inner harbor, flanked by massive stone breakwaters in a narrow, buoyed channel, looks almost resort-like. Calm waters inside, colorful pangas bobbing at docks, the iconic Arch of Los Cabos visible in the distance on clear days. Yachts from around the world tie up here, drawn by world-class marlin fishing, vibrant nightlife, and the promise of protected refuge after long ocean passages. The potential appears endless. Easy in and out access, deep berths, full services, a perfect jumping-off point for adventures south or north. It should be one of the most welcoming, least intimidating harbor entrances in all of Mexico's Pacific waters. Yet this seemingly tame gateway hides a vicious bar that has humbled countless captains, flipped boats, and turned routine departures into desperate struggles against refracted Pacific fury and powerful tidal sets. The deceptive charm stems from the breakwaters themselves. Built to shield the marina from direct ocean assault, they do an admirable job of blocking most swell energy, but they also force incoming Pacific ground swells to refract sharply around the outer ends, funneling steep, accelerated waves straight into the narrow entrance corridor. What might register as a moderate 4 or 5 foot ocean swell offshore compresses and steepens dramatically over the shallow bar that naturally forms across the mouth, especially when combined with strong tidal flows rushing in and out through the constricted opening. During peak ebbs, currents can push 3 to 4 knots or more toward the sea. When that opposes incoming swell, a frequent scenario with prevailing westerlies or southerlies, standing waves rise across the entire channel width, breaking in confused, close-period patterns that create a washing machine churn. Sand shifts seasonally and after storms. Dredging keeps the main channel navigable for big yachts, but pockets of shallows linger, catching keels at inopportune moments. While fog is rare in this sunny latitude, sudden squalls blow up from the south, whipping chop into whitecaps inside the approach. Local harbor masters monitor conditions closely, posting warnings and sometimes restricting small craft movement. But the bar's moods change fast. 1 minute flat, the next a gauntlet of breaking crests that demand perfect timing and nerve. The mechanics of mayhem follow a pattern as predictable as it is punishing. Outgoing tides accelerate through the gap, slamming against refracted swells to erect near-vertical faces that collapse with explosive force right where the channel is narrowest. Larger vessels lose steerage in aerated foam. Rudders cavitate, props spin without purchase, hulls pound relentlessly until something structural gives. Smaller sport fishers and pangas, the workhorses of local charters, get launched high on one breaker, only to drop into the next trough with jarring violence, often rolling or broaching toward the rocky breakwater edges. The confined space offers little forgiveness. Veer outside the markers, and you're grinding on submerged boulders or the shifting bar in seconds. Commercial fishing fleets and high-end charter boats that run daily trips to the famous marlin grounds know the routine by heart. Obsess over swell forecasts and tide tables. Depart and return only during slack or favorable flood. Never push marginal conditions, no matter how eager the clients. Recreational cruisers and delivery skippers, many arriving after long Baja hauls or heading out for the Revillagigedo Islands, frequently misjudge the transition from serene marina basin to sudden ocean violence, resulting in capsizes, groundings, and tow requests that clog VHF channels and fill salvage logs. Trying to survive, let alone thrive, during one crossing here becomes a high-stakes ballet of anticipation and power management. You're captaining a well-found 40-foot sport fisher loaded with a group of high-roller anglers out of the marina at dawn, bound for the famous Golden Gate Banks where striped marlin hunt bait balls. The morning report shows moderate southwest swell and light winds, conditions the dockmaster calls manageable. You idle past the fuel dock, feeling the gentle tug of the ebb beginning to strengthen. As you near the entrance gap, the first refracted set rolls in. Innocent-looking offshore, but sharpening into steep faces as it hits the bar. You align with the buoy line, throttle up to carry momentum through the chop. Suddenly, the lead wave curls white across the channel. The boat climbs sharply, launches off the crest, then slams into the following trough with a shudder that rattles teeth and sends spray cascading over the windshield. A client grips the fighting chair as the hull twists and cross-chop. The depth sounder dips alarmingly as an uncharted shoal pocket rises beneath the keel. Props brush sand with a grinding protest, heart-stopping for a split second, before you surge forward into deeper water. Had the set arrived larger or the bar migrated overnight, the story could turn ugly fast. Boat slewing beam to, next breaker rolling green water over the transom, engines flooding, panic mayday over the radio. Many scrape through with bruised egos and wet decks. Others require assistance that runs into thousands for tows, engine overhauls after sand ingestion, and hull repairs from repeated pounding. The entrance doesn't roar its danger like wilder northern bars. It sneaks up, lulling with the glamour of Cabo, then strikes when complacency sets in. In the end, Cabo San Lucas's marina mouth serves as a potent symbol of illusion versus reality on the water. We flock here for the luxury, the fishing legends, the sunset margaritas, assuming modern engineering has tamed the sea. Yet the Pacific quietly refracts around our breakwaters, amplifies currents through narrow gaps, and reshapes sand beneath our keels. Incident reports and caution flags sketch the outline. They miss the visceral tension of watching a breaker form unexpectedly, the momentary terror when bottom rises too close, the flood of relief upon clearing into open ocean. Nevertheless, a hard-earned resilience persists among those who call this place home port. Local captains develop an almost sixth-sense feel for the bar's rhythms, exchange instant updates via group chats and radio nets, adjust plans fluidly to match the day's mood, rather than forcing the issue. That mix of caution, experience, and persistent engagement, recognizing the entrance can turn vicious while continuing to use it for charters, deliveries, and dreams, points to an enduring maritime truth. Genuine safety isn't about conquering the ocean, but about respecting its hidden teeth and knowing exactly when and how to slip past them unscathed. From the sun-soaked glamour and subtle menace of Cabo's narrow gateway, our voyage turns toward deeper Pacific waters, perhaps circling back north, or venturing to remoter, wilder inlets, where isolation amplifies every danger tenfold. Bay number 8, Ensenada Bay Entrance, the working port's relentless Pacific threshold. Picture the bustling northern Baja coastline, where the city of Ensenada sprawls along a wide, curving bay, framed by rugged hills and the endless Pacific horizon. Commercial fishing fleets crowd the inner harbor, cruise ships dock at modern terminals, and sport boats mix with pangas in a colorful chaos of daily commerce. The entrance to Ensenada Bay opens broadly between Punta Banda to the north and the southern headlands, seemingly generous. Deep water close to shore, wide approach channels, buoys and range lights guiding vessels past the kelp beds and into protected waters. From the Malecon Promenade, or the decks of outgoing charters, it looks almost straightforward, a reliable gateway for tuna boats heading to the Coronado Islands, whale-watching vessels departing for gray whale nurseries, and yachts transiting the Baja Bash. The potential feels practical and inviting. Sheltered anchorage inside, fuel and ice readily available, quick runs to productive offshore banks. It should rank among the more forgiving entries along this stretch of coast. Yet Ensenada's bay mouth carries a reputation as one of Baja's most consistently hazardous bar crossings. A place where large Pacific swells refract off distant points, strong tidal currents collide with wind-driven chop, and a deceptive openness hides sudden, violent braking zones that have claimed vessels of every size over decades. The bitter irony rests in its apparent accessibility. Unlike narrow, rock-bound inlets that telegraph danger immediately, Ensenada spreads wide, sometimes over a mile from headland to headland, tempting skippers to relax their vigilance. But that breadth allows long-period ground swells from distant North Pacific storms to march in unimpeded, refracting off the kelp-covered reefs in Punta Banda, to concentrate energy into steep, fast-moving peaks right across the main approach channel. Tidal flows, driven by the bay's large volume, can exceed 4 knots during strong ebbs, pouring seaward and opposing incoming swell to erect towering, near-vertical faces that break across broad expanses of shallow water. When prevailing northwest winds pile chop against the outflow, the entire entrance becomes a confused maelstrom of standing waves, whitewater, and cross seas. Sand and kelp drift shift with every major weather system. What charts show as safe depths one week can shoal dramatically the next. While the commercial port maintains dredged channels for deep draft vessels, smaller craft face unmarked bars and braking zones that wander unpredictably. Local harbor masters broadcast condition updates, and experienced captains treat the entrance with the same caution reserved for far wilder bars farther north. Yet every season delivers fresh tales of groundings, broaches, and near misses that remind everyone the Pacific never truly rests. The anatomy of trouble here unfolds with mechanical inevitability. Powerful ebb tides surge toward open water, meeting long-period swells head-on to build steep, curling breakers that collapse with thunderous force across the widest parts of the approach. Larger fishing boats and cargo vessels lose momentum in aerated foam. Rudders become ineffective, props cavitate wildly, hulls hammer until frames groan or welds crack. Smaller pangas and sport fishers, the backbone of Ensenada's charter fleet, get launched skyward on one wave only to slam into the next trough with shattering impacts, often rolling or slewing sideways towards submerged reefs or the rocky southern shore. The generous width paradoxically offers false comfort. Stray from the preferred track, and the bottom rises abruptly beneath you, turning a routine transit into a desperate fight for survival. Commercial tuna clippers and headboats that depend on this passage know the liturgy by heart. Pore over swell models and tide predictions, depart only during slack or early flood, never challenge a building sea, no matter the pressure from paying customers. Recreational cruisers heading south from California or locals running day trips frequently underestimate the transition from calm inner bay to open ocean violence, leading to capsizes that fill towboat schedules and hospital emergency rooms. Surviving, truly surviving, one crossing here demands every ounce of preparation and instinct. You're running a sturdy 35-foot panga-style charter loaded with anglers bound for the Alijos Rocks, or just a quick run to the local banks at first light. The morning forecast shows moderate west-northwest swell and light winds, conditions locals call tranquilo pero con cuidado. You idle past the cruise terminal, engines rumbling, feeling the current begin to pull as the ebb strengthens. As you clear the headlands, the first big set rolls in, long, rolling offshore, but refracting sharply and steepening over the shallow approach. You pick what looks like the deepest gut between foaming ridges, throttle forward to punch through. The boat climbs the lead wave, launches off the crest, then crashes into the following trough with a bone-jarring thud that sends rods clattering and spray drenching everyone. A client clings to the gunwale as the hull twists violently in cross-chop. The sounder plummets as an uncharted shoal pocket rises beneath the keel. Props strike sand with a momentary grinding scream, stomach-dropping terror, before you surge ahead into deeper water. If the set had stacked higher, or the bar migrated overnight, the outcome flips fast. Boat broaching beam 2, next breaker rolling green over the transom, engines flooding, frantic calls crackling over VHF. Many limp through scarred but afloat. Others require towing that devours days of earnings for salvage, engine flushing after sand ingestion, and hull repairs from repeated pounding. The entrance doesn't announce its malice with narrow rocks or towering headlands. It waits patiently, then unleashes when least expected. Philosophically, Ensenada Bay's wide mouth stands as a stark lesson in the limits of apparent safety. We build ports, dredge channels, mark approaches, assume breadth equals forgiveness. Yet the Pacific refracts, currents amplify, and sand rearranges itself beneath every keel. Wreck logs and condition reports sketch the statistics. They miss the intimate dread of watching a set approach from miles away. The helpless instant when depth vanishes. The flood of adrenaline-fueled relief upon reaching open water. Still, a gritty, workmanlike resilience endures among those who make their living here. Ensenada captains time their runs with near superhuman precision, born of decades on the water. Share hard-won observations over café con leche or radio nets. Adapt schedules fluidly to the ocean's whims, rather than forcing the calendar. That blend of vigilance, humility, and stubborn persistence, knowing the entrance can turn savage while continuing to cross it for fish, family, and future, captures something essential. At sea, true mastery isn't domination, but an ongoing negotiation with forces far larger than any single boat or skipper. From the hard-working bustle and hidden teeth of Ensenada's broad gateway, our journey pushes deeper into Pacific waters, toward remoter, less traveled inlets where isolation magnifies every swell and every mistake carries heavier consequences. Bay number 9, Todos Santos Bay Entrance, the quiet southern deception of Baja's open waters. Imagine the serene, sun-drenched sweep of southern Baja California, where the desert meets a wide, gently curving bay south of La Paz. Todos Santos Bay opens broadly between Punta Lobos to the north and the rugged headlands near Cerritos Beach to the south. A seemingly gentle expanse of blue framed by white sand beaches, rolling surf breaks popular with longboarders, and distant Sierra de la Laguna peaks hazy in the heat. From the shore at Cerritos, or the decks of small fishing pangas launched from the beach, the entrance to the bay feels almost non-existent. No narrow channel, no jetties, just a gradual transition from protected inner waters to the open Pacific. Sport boats cruise out easily for roosterfish runs along the rocks. Whale-watching pangas head toward the seasonal gray whale nurseries in nearby lagoons, and cruising yachts anchor in the lee during northerlies. The potential appears tranquil and forgiving. Wide approaches, good holding in sand, quick access to productive inshore and offshore grounds without the choke points of man-made harbors. It should be one of the least intimidating bays along this stretch of coast. Yet Todos Santos Bay carries a subtle, insidious reputation as one of Baja's most quietly dangerous open-water entrances. A place where long-period Pacific swells arrive unannounced, refract off distant points, and break violently across broad, shallow bars that shift with every major swell train, turning seemingly calm transits into sudden, disorienting chaos. The cruel subtlety lies in its openness. Without confining headlands or artificial barriers to focus energy, the bay invites complacency. No obvious bottleneck to telegraph danger, no range lights or buoys forcing a precise line. But that very breadth allows massive ground swells, often born from distant southern hemisphere storms thousands of miles away, to sweep in with deceptive gentleness, only to refract off the underwater contours of Punta Lobos in the Cerritos Shelf, concentrating into steep, close-period peaks across wide shallows that extend far offshore. Tidal currents here are modest compared to narrower inlets, but wind-driven sets from prevailing northwest trades can pile chop against incoming swell, creating confused, braking zones that wander unpredictably. The bottom shelves gradually from deep water to ankle-depth sand over hundreds of yards. What feels like safe cruising depth one moment can shoal abruptly as sandbars migrate after big weather. While the area lacks the dramatic rocks of northern Baja, the sheer scale of the braking zone, sometimes stretching a mile or more across, means boats can find themselves in white water with no obvious escape route. Local fishermen and surf camp operators treat the outer bay with quiet respect. Check swell periods obsessively, avoid departing or returning during peak opposing conditions. Never assume the open water stays open. Incidents accumulate slowly but steadily. Groundings on invisible bars, broaches in confused seas, flipped pangas that fill local salvage stories and remind everyone that vastness does not equal safety. The pattern of peril plays out with patient, almost invisible cruelty. Incoming long-period swells meet wind chop or weak tidal outflow to erect steep, fast-breaking faces across broad expanses of shallow water. Larger sport fishers lose forward way in aerated foam. Props cavitate, rudders lose purchase, hulls pound sand until keels dig in or gel coat shatters. Smaller pangas and skiffs, the everyday workhorses of Todos Santos, get picked up high on one breaker, only to drop into the next trough with shattering force, often rolling completely or shedding gear and passengers into churning white water. The generous spread of the bay offers no narrow channel to follow. Stray too far toward the outer bar, and the bottom rises without warning, turning a leisurely cruise into a desperate struggle to regain deep water. Experienced local captains who run daily trips for surf lessons, fishing charters, or whale tours know the unspoken rules. Study buoy reports from far offshore. Time movements with the swell window. Never push against a building set, no matter how flat the inner bay appears. Recreational boaters, many trailering down from the States or renting pangas for a day, frequently misread the deceptive calm, venturing out only to find themselves trapped in a mile-wide breaker zone with no clear path back, leading to capsizes, long swims to shore, and tow calls that stretch local resources thin. Enduring, or merely attempting, one transit here becomes an exercise in sustained vigilance and humility. You're skippering a 25-foot panga loaded with a small group of fly fishermen heading out from Cerritos Beach toward the roosterfish grounds along the southern rocks at dawn. The morning looks postcard perfect. Light offshore breeze, moderate southwest swell forecast, water glassy inside the bay. You push off the beach, engines idling, feeling the gentle rise as you motor seaward. A mile out, the first long-period set begins to show, rolling smoothly at first, then refracting off the outer shelf and steepening sharply over the shallows. You pick what appears to be a deeper lane between foaming lines, throttle up to maintain headway. Suddenly, the lead wave curls white across a broad front. The panga climbs steeply, launches off the crest, then slams into the following trough with a jarring crash that sends rods skittering and spray drenching everyone. A client grips the thwart as the boat twists violently in cross-chop. The sounder flashes downward as sand rises beneath the hull. Props kiss bottom with a grinding shudder, momentary heart stoppage, before you power through into slightly deeper water. Had the set arrived larger or the bars shifted overnight, the story could end differently. Boat broaching sideways, next breaker rolling green over the gunnels, engines flooding, frantic waves to nearby pangas or shore. Many scrape back to the beach, wet, shaken, and wiser. Others require beach tows, engine flushing after sand ingestion, and hull patching that eats into slim margins. The bay doesn't roar its threat. It waits quietly, then reveals its teeth when distance has already committed you. In reflection, Todos Santos Bay's wide, open entrance serves as a profound reminder that danger often hides in plain sight. We seek shelter in vastness, assume openness means forgiveness, overlook the slow migration of sand and the patient arrival of distant swells. Yet the Pacific refracts, concentrates, and breaks across miles of shallows with indifferent precision. Incident counts remain scattered and underreported. They miss the creeping anxiety of watching a set build from miles away, the helpless instant when depth disappears beneath the keel, the rush of relief upon regaining the beach. Still, a low-key, sun-baked resilience thrives among those who live and work here. Local pangueros time their runs with near-instinctive feel for the swell's rhythm, share quiet observations over ceviche at beachside palapas, adjust plans to the ocean's mood rather than fighting the calendar. That blend of patience, local knowledge, and persistent use, recognizing the bay can turn unforgiving while continuing to launch every day for fish, guests, and survival, speaks to something fundamental. At sea, safety is never permanent, but survival often comes from never assuming the water will stay kind. From the quiet, deceptive openness of Todos Santos Bay, our journey swings toward even remoter Pacific corners, perhaps to isolated coves where sheer isolation turns every swell into a potential catastrophe, and human presence thins to the barest thread. Bay number 10, Drake Passage approaches, the furious funnel, where continents part and oceans rage. Picture the uttermost end of the inhabited world, a vast, storm-lashed stretch of gray-green water squeezed between the jagged southern tip of South America and the northernmost fringe of the Antarctic Peninsula. The Drake Passage, more a brutal strait than a conventional bay, funnels the entire might of the Southern Ocean between Cape Horn and the South Shetland Islands, creating one of the shortest yet most violent sea passages on the planet. From the rolling decks of expedition vessels departing Ushuaia or Punta Arenas, the entrance looks deceptively ordinary at first. Distant snow-capped peaks fading into mist, albatrosses gliding on stiff winds, the water surface deceptively flat in rare lulls between gales. Research ships, small cruise vessels carrying hardy tourists, and the occasional yacht bound for Antarctic summer research stations all must pass this gauntlet to reach the White Continent. The potential seems almost mythic. Gateway to the last pristine wilderness, home to penguins, seals, and icebergs the size of small countries. It should be the ultimate rite of passage for any serious mariner. Instead, the Drake earns its infamous nickname as the most consistently ferocious stretch of open water anywhere on Earth. A place where low-pressure systems circle the globe unimpeded, winds howl at hurricane strength for days, and seas build to heights that make even large research vessels feel like toys in a washing machine. The savage paradox is in its scale and exposure. Unlike confined inlets where headlands or bars focus danger, the Drake is wide, roughly 500 miles across at its narrowest. Yet that very openness allows the roaring 40s and furious 50s to accelerate without obstruction. Westerly winds blow almost continuously around Antarctica, piling up enormous fetch, thousands of miles of uninterrupted ocean, that generates long-period ground swells traveling at breakneck speed. When these swells meet opposing currents or the shallowing continental shelf near the Antarctic Peninsula, they refract and steepen dramatically, stacking into near-vertical walls 40, 50, even 60 feet high in extreme events. Low-pressure systems, the infamous Cape Horners, spin off the Southern Ocean with little warning, dropping barometric pressure so fast that winds can jump from 20 to 80 knots in hours. The Antarctic Circumpolar Current, the strongest on the planet, pours through the passage at speeds that rival major rivers, creating standing waves, overfalls, and chaotic cross seas where peaks collide from multiple directions. Icebergs calved from distant shelves drift through like silent icebergs of doom, while rogue waves, those legendary single monsters twice the height of surrounding seas, appear without pattern. Expedition vessels equipped with ice-class hulls and seasoned crews still heave to or alter course when conditions deteriorate. Smaller yachts attempting the passage often turn back or suffer catastrophic damage. The anatomy of destruction here is elemental and merciless. Sustained gale-force westerlies drive seas that march in regular marching ranks until they hit opposing current or shallowing bottom, refracting into near-vertical faces that break with explosive force across miles of water. Vessels lose steerage in aerated whitewater miles wide. Rudders cavitate uselessly, props lose bite. Hulls pound relentlessly until frames crack, windows shatter, or watertight integrity fails. Smaller expedition yachts get picked up bodily by one wave, only to be dropped into the next trough with shattering violence, often rolling completely or shedding masts and rigging. Even large research ships, icebreakers, and polar-class cruise vessels roll to extreme angles, sending unsecured gear crashing, passengers and crew bracing in racks while green water sweeps decks. The passage doesn't discriminate by size. It humbles everything from steel-hulled research platforms to carbon fiber racing yachts attempting record runs. Maydays are rare only because communications are good, and rescue assets, when weather permits, are closer than in true open ocean. Still, every season brings tales of dismasted vessels, flooded engine rooms, and crews airlifted in white-knuckle helicopter operations. Surviving, if that word even applies, a single crossing of the Drake becomes an ordeal measured in days rather than hours. You're aboard a purpose-built expedition vessel carrying scientists, photographers, and adventure tourists bound for the Antarctic Peninsula at the start of the austral summer season. Ushuaia fades astern under leaden skies. The barometer is already falling. Within hours, the first low-pressure system arrives, winds building steadily from 30 to 50 knots. Seas grow from 10 feet to 30, then 40, marching in disciplined ranks from the southwest. The ship heaves and pitches violently, Stabilizers strain to keep rolls below 30 degrees. You stand on the bridge wing in foul weather gear, sprays stinging your face even behind glass, watching each crest approach like a moving mountain. A rogue wave, perhaps 50 feet, rears suddenly. The bow plunges into the preceding trough, burying the foredeck in green water that slams against the wheelhouse windows with enough force to crack reinforced glass. The vessel shudders, rolls hard to starboard. Alarms blare from unsecured equipment tumbling below. Passengers strap into bunks or cling to handrails in the lounge. Seasickness reaches epidemic levels. If the bar has shallowed unexpectedly near the Antarctic shelf, or an iceberg forces a course change into worse seas, the pounding intensifies. Hull plates flexing audibly, rivets weeping, structural members groaning under cyclic loading. Survival narrows to endurance. Reduce speed to match wave period. Alter course to present the best angle to breaking crests. Pray the next low doesn't deepen faster than forecast. Many vessels emerge into the relative shelter of the Bransfield Strait, bruised but intact. Others limp into port with cracked superstructures, lost lifeboats, and crews nursing injuries that range from broken bones to hypothermia from flooded compartments. The passage doesn't just threaten hulls, it threatens schedules, research grants, tourist dreams, and occasionally lives in ways statistics never fully capture. Philosophically, the Drake Passage stands as the ultimate rebuke to human arrogance about controlling the sea. We build ice-class ships, install state-of-the-art stabilizers, forecast weather with satellite precision, equip vessels with EPIRBs and satellite phones. Yet the Southern Ocean laughs, accelerates its winds unimpeded, piles seas higher than engineering tables anticipate, and reminds every soul aboard that some places remain beyond taming. Lost logs and canceled expeditions tell part of the story. They miss the visceral terror of watching a wall of water rise astern, the bone-deep exhaustion of days without sleep, the quiet awe when the storm finally eases and albatrosses reappear. Still, an extraordinary tenacity endures among those who cross it repeatedly. Polar captains develop almost mystical feel for the passage's moods, time voyages with obsessive attention to pressure charts, share hard-won knowledge across mess tables and radio nets. That blend of preparation, humility, and stubborn determination, acknowledging the Drake can destroy in hours while continuing to sail it for science, exploration, and wonder, reveals something profound. At the edge of the world, true courage isn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to meet overwhelming force with measured respect and keep going anyway. From the howling chaos where two oceans and two continents collide, our journey turns toward even more remote and unforgiving corners. Perhaps to isolated sub-Antarctic coves or Pacific atoll lagoons, where coral heads and breaking reefs guard entrances that few vessels ever attempt twice. Bay number 11, Beagle Channel Western Approaches, the narrow labyrinth at the edge of the world. Envision the uttermost southern reaches of the Americas, where the continent fractures into a maze of islands, fjords, and channels carved by ancient glaciers. The Beagle Channel, named for Darwin's famous voyage, snakes roughly east-west for about 150 miles between Tierra del Fuego to the south and the main island mass to the north. Its western approaches, near where the channel opens toward the Pacific through a series of constricted passages around Brecknock Peninsula and the Wollaston Islands, form one of the most intricate and unforgiving gateways anywhere on Earth. From the rolling deck of a steel expedition yacht or a Chilean Navy patrol boat departing from Puerto Williams, the entrance looks almost poetic at first. Sheer granite walls rising straight from black water, hanging glaciers calving into the channel with distant thunder, kelp forests swaying in the current like submerged forests. Albatrosses and petrels wheel overhead. The occasional sea lion hauls out on rock ledges. The potential feels historic and pristine. A protected inner route avoiding the open ocean violence of Cape Horn. A path used by sailing ships for centuries, now favored by adventure cruisers and research vessels heading toward the Antarctic convergence. It should be the safer, more scenic alternative to rounding the Horn. Instead, these western approaches rank among the most consistently lethal confined waterways in the southern hemisphere. a place where Willowa squalls blast down fjord walls at hurricane force. Tidal currents rip through narrows at terrifying speeds. Uncharted rocks lurk beneath kelp, and sudden visibility loss from snow squalls or driving rain turns navigation into blind faith. The vicious irony is in the channel's supposed shelter. Unlike the exposed drake, the Beagle promises protection from open ocean swells, yet that very enclosure amplifies every other danger. Katabatic Willowas. Violent downdrafts pouring off high ice fields and mountains accelerate through narrow gaps, reaching 100 knots or more in seconds with no warning. Tidal streams, driven by massive height differences between Pacific and Atlantic sides, funnel through constrictions at speeds often exceeding 8 or 9 knots during peak ebbs or floods. Where current opposes wind, standing waves rise to 20 feet or higher in places like the Paso del Indio or the narrow gut near Brecknock, breaking white across the entire width and leaving no room to maneuver. Countless rocks, reefs, and submerged glacial erratics dot the approaches. Many are unmarked or poorly charted because surveys struggle against constant weather. Kelp grows thick over shallows, hiding dangers until a keel strikes with catastrophic force. Snow and sleet squalls reduce visibility to boat lengths in minutes. Radar clutter from steep cliffs adds confusion. Chilean and Argentine pilots who know these waters treat every transit like a surgical procedure. Time the tide to the minute. Watch barometric pressure obsessively. Never enter marginal conditions, regardless of schedule pressure. Wrecks litter the bottom, from sailing ship days to modern steel yachts. Some visible at low tide as rusted ribs, others claimed entirely by the black depths. The mechanics of catastrophe here are swift and merciless. A sudden willowaw blasts down a hanging valley, healing even large vessels 40 or 50 degrees in heartbeats. Unsecured gear crashes, sails shred if set, masts bend or snap. Tidal overfalls form standing breakers that halt forward progress. Boats lose steerage in aerated whitewater, broach violently, and slam into rock walls or submerged ledges. In narrow passages, a single misjudged course change can put the hull on granite in seconds. Smaller expedition yachts and steel cutters, popular among high-latitude adventurers, get pinned against cliffs by downdrafts or swept sideways by current into breaking overfalls, often rolling completely or holing on unseen rocks. Even Chilean Navy patrol boats, built for these waters, heave to or seek emergency shelter in side coves when conditions deteriorate. Maydays are frequent during the austral summer cruising season. Rescue comes by helicopter when weather permits, but often vessels must survive hours or days, pinned down until the blow passes. The approaches don't offer the slow buildup of open ocean. Danger arrives instantaneously. One moment calm water, the next a wall of wind and whitecaps roaring down from invisible heights. Surviving, or enduring, one transit through these western approaches becomes an exercise in hypervigilance, stretched over hours of unrelenting tension. You're skippering a purpose-built steel expedition cutter carrying scientists, filmmakers, and paying adventurers bound from Puerto Williams toward the western fjords and eventual rounding of Cape Horn. The pilot books a dawn departure to catch the favorable flood. Barometer steady, wind forecast light westerly. You motor west under overcast skies, engines thrumming, eyes scanning every ripple for telltale kelp or back eddy. As you near the first constriction near Isla Grande, the current begins to boil. Standing waves form ahead like a line of white teeth. You thread the deepest gut, watching depth sounder and radar obsessively. Suddenly, a willowaw screams down an unseen valley. Wind jumps from 15 to 70 knots in seconds. The boat heels hard, lee rail buried. You fight the wheel to keep her head up as spray blinds the pilot house windows. The standing wave ahead steepens to 15 feet, breaking across the channel width. You throttle to maintain steerage, but the overfall grabs the hull, slews her beam to. The next crest rolls green water across the deck, flooding cockpit and engine room vents. Alarms shriek from shorted electrics. A crew member is thrown against the rail, bruising ribs. If the current had been against you or a submerged rock waited beneath the foam, the outcome turns catastrophic. Hull grinding on granite, frames buckling, mayday crackling over HF radio while the wind howls. Many vessels claw through scarred but afloat, limping into shelter to repair torn canvas and bent stanchions. Others require Chilean Navy tow or long abandonment, while helicopters hover in marginal visibility. Costs run into six figures for salvage in these remote waters, when salvage is even possible. Philosophically, the Western Beagle Channel approaches stand as a brutal reminder that shelter can be the most dangerous illusion of all. We seek refuge in narrow waters, assume enclosed channels tame the elements, chart routes with satellite precision. Yet willywaws ignore forecasts, currents ignore charts, rocks hide beneath kelp, and nature asserts dominance in seconds rather than hours. Wreck databases and pilot logs capture fragments of the toll. They miss the visceral shock of wind slamming like a physical blow, the helpless instant when steerage vanishes, the bone-deep relief when the next constriction is behind you. Still, an austere, almost monastic resilience endures among those who navigate these waters repeatedly. Chilean pilots accumulate lifetimes of transits, develop near-telepathic feel for the channel's moods, share terse wisdom over mate gourds in tiny pilot stations. That combination of meticulous preparation, absolute humility, and quiet persistence, knowing the Beagle can destroy without warning, while continuing to thread its narrows for exploration, duty, and survival, reveals something elemental. At the absolute edge of the map, mastery is measured not in conquest, but in the daily negotiation with forces that refuse to be negotiated with. From the wind-scoured granite labyrinth where the Beagle opens toward the Pacific, our odyssey approaches its final dark corner, a remote, seldom visited cove or passage where human presence thins to near zero. Isolation turns every risk exponential, and the sea enforces its most absolute rules. Bay number 12, Shipwreck Bay, South Georgia Island, the forgotten grave where ice and isolation claim all. Imagine the sub-Antarctic wilderness at the edge of human endurance, a jagged, ice-scarred island rising straight from the Southern Ocean like a broken tooth. South Georgia lies roughly 800 miles east-southeast of the Falklands, a place so remote that supply ships visit only a handful of times each year, weather permitting. Shipwreck Bay, also known historically as Prince Olav Harbor, or variations thereof in old charts, indents the rugged northwestern coast, a narrow, glacier-carved fjord flanked by sheer black cliffs draped in hanging icefalls and breeding colonies of king penguins that number in the tens of thousands. From the water, the entrance appears almost cathedral-like on rare calm days, towering rock walls funneling into a sheltered basin where rusting whale factory hulks from the early 20th century still lie half-submerged, silent monuments to a vanished industry. Expedition vessels and the occasional yacht that dares the passage seek temporary refuge here from the perpetual gales, hoping to land briefly to study wildlife or pay respects at the abandoned whaling stations. The potential feels hauntingly beautiful. Protected water in one of the stormiest latitudes on Earth, surrounded by glaciers, fur seals, and the raw drama of nature, untouched by mass tourism. It should be a rare sanctuary amid the furious 50s. Instead, Shipwreck Bay ranks among the most lethally unforgiving anchorages in the entire sub-Antarctic. A place where katabatic winds scream down glacier valleys at over 100 knots. Uncharted rocks and kelp-choked shallows guard every approach. Ice calving creates rogue waves inside the fjord, and total isolation means that any mistake becomes final. The merciless paradox is in the name itself. Shipwreck Bay was not chosen poetically. It was earned through repeated catastrophe. The narrow entrance, barely 300 yards wide at its throat, funnels the full force of Southern Ocean lows straight into the fjord like a wind tunnel. Katabatic gusts pouring off the island's central ice cap accelerate through the high valleys, blasting down onto the water surface with such violence that even large steel vessels are heeled over 30 or 40 degrees in seconds. Tidal streams, though modest in range, combine with wind-driven set to create vicious overfalls and standing waves across the constricted mouth. Submerged glacial moraines and uncharted pinnacle rocks litter the approaches. Many are covered only at high water, waiting like teeth beneath thick kelp mats. Icebergs and bergy bits calve constantly from surrounding tidewater glaciers, drifting into the entrance and creating moving hazards that can hole a hull or pin a vessel against cliffs. Sudden whiteouts from blowing snow reduce visibility to 0 in minutes. GPS and radar struggle against steep terrain clutter. No rescue assets are based on South Georgia. The nearest help is either the Falklands, days away, or passing research vessels, weeks between passages. British Antarctic Survey personnel at nearby King Edward Point monitor conditions when present, but they cannot launch in extreme weather. Every vessel that enters does so knowing that if things go wrong, self-rescue is the only option, and the odds are grim. The sequence of ruin here is as swift as it is absolute. A building low-pressure system funnels gale-force westerlies into the fjord mouth. Within minutes, katabatic blasts roar down the hanging valleys, heeling vessels hard and driving them toward lee shores. Standing waves form across the entrance narrows, breaking white from cliff to cliff and halting forward progress. Boats lose steerage in aerated foam. Rudders become useless. Props cavitate. Hulls slam against submerged rocks or ice chunks with bone-jarring force. Smaller expedition yachts and steel cutters, the only pleasure craft foolish or brave enough to attempt South Georgia, broach violently, roll completely, or are driven onto kelp-covered ledges where keels dig in and hulls split. Even larger research or charter vessels heave to outside the entrance, or seek desperate shelter inside coves, only to find themselves pinned by downdrafts or drifting ice. Groundings are often total. The combination of steep to shores, deep water right up to the rocks, and unrelenting wind means that once a vessel touches bottom, it is pinned until the next gale tears it apart. Historical wrecks, from 19th century sealers to 20th century whale catchers, still lie in plain sight at low tide, ribs and boilers half buried in black sand. Modern incidents remain underreported because few witnesses survive to tell them. The bay claims boats and souls with equal indifference. Surviving, if the word even applies, a single stay in Shipwreck Bay becomes an ordeal of endurance rather than navigation. You are master of a 45-foot steel expedition cutter carrying a small scientific party and hardy adventurers who have dreamed of South Georgia for years. After a brutal crossing from the Falklands, you approach the entrance under clearing skies, barometer rising, hoping for 24 hours of respite to land and study the king penguin colony. You thread the narrow gut slowly, engines at idle, eyes glued to forward-looking sonar and the kelp fringe marking shallows. Suddenly, a katabatic blast screams down the main glacier valley. Wind jumps from 20 to 90 knots in under a minute. The boat heels violently to port. You fight the wheel to keep her head into the gust while spray blinds every window. The standing wave at the throat steepens to 12 feet, breaking across the entire width. You throttle to maintain steerage, but the downdraft slams the hull sideways. The boat broaches, rolls hard. Green water floods the cockpit and companionway. Alarms shriek from flooded electrics. A crew member is thrown across the saloon, cracking ribs against a bulkhead. Ice chunks drift past like silent torpedoes. One grazes the hull with a grating screech that makes every heart stop. If the gust had lasted seconds longer, or an uncharted rock waited beneath the foam, the cutter would have been driven onto the lee shore, pinned against cliffs, and pounded to pieces by the next set of breakers. Many vessels manage a few hours of uneasy shelter before the wind shifts and forces them back to sea. Others drag anchors across kelp, ground hard, and spend days or weeks waiting for a weather window that may never arrive, or never leave at all. Salvage here is theoretical. Most wrecks remain where they die. In the deepest sense, Shipwreck Bay embodies the absolute limit of human presence on the sea. We sail to the ends of the earth seeking wonder. Penguins marching in orderly lines, glaciers calving into mirror water, silence so profound it hurts the ears. Yet the place itself refuses domestication. We carry satellite phones, ice-class hulls, storm sails, EPIRBs, and years of high-latitude experience. And still, the wind finds gaps in our preparation. The rocks hide beneath kelp. The ice arrives without invitation. Incident reports are sparse because few return to file them. The bay keeps its secrets in rust and silence. Yet even here, a strange, austere resilience flickers among the rare mariners who have entered and left again. They speak of it in low voices over rum in Ushuaia bars, not with bravado, but with the quiet awe of people who have been allowed to glimpse something vast and indifferent, and been permitted to leave. That fragile thread of survival, knowing the bay can erase you in minutes while choosing to enter anyway, for science, for beauty, for the sheer audacity of being there, carries a final truth. At the farthest margins of the map, courage is measured not by conquest, but by the willingness to accept that some places will always belong to the sea alone. And so our journey through the 13 bays ends where it must, in silence, wind, and ice. Places that mock every chart, every forecast, every illusion of control. Thank you for traveling these dark waters with me. If any of these names still echo in your mind weeks from now, if you catch yourself staring at a flat bay and wondering what hides beneath, then the point has been made. The ocean never forgets, neither should we. If you value the calm water under your keel and the certainty of tomorrow's sunrise, support this series with a like. Tell me in the comments, which of these 13 would you refuse to enter for even a single hour? Your answers keep these stories alive.